What's up, everyone? Welcome into the Dairyland Drive. On tonight's episode, we're going to go full mock draft, 1 through 32 in the first round. If we were GMs, what we would do at each pick. As always, I'm Colin Tilbert with Mike Schneider, Riley Ashe, and for the first time in the Dairyland Drive existence, we have a guest host in the building, the Big Daddy Diesel of them all, Matt Gutzman. First off, appreciate you jumping on the Dairyland Drive. How the heck are you doing?
I'm doing great, and it's quite an honor. Thank you guys for having me on, being the first guest. I feel like I have some big shoes to fill right now.
Well, yeah, you know football. You're fun. You got the broadcasting background, so not totally new to you. But before we get started, Riley, Mike, I know we've been looking forward to this 1 through 32 for a few weeks now. How much time did you put into this, and how excited are you to go through this 1 through 32 first rounds?
Put some time into it, enough where I think I put some notes down for each player that I selected. So
yeah, probably a couple hours. It wasn't too bad.
Yeah.
In between, or when he was getting his tattoos done, probably just had the iPhone ripped up doing some research. So. All right. So, yeah, full disclosure, we did draft the last couple of days, 1 through 32, just for time purposes, because we can talk quite a while. So I did not want to go an hour and a half, try to cut it down to a reasonable time, but we'll try to keep each pick to about 1 to 2 minutes. So what we did, 32 divided by 4, 8. So each of us had 8 picks. We rotated. Diesel picked first. I did second, Mike third, and Riley fourth, just in that order. Did that all the way for 1 to 32. So we will jump right into it. We didn't have any rules. We did have one rule. There was no trades. It was just straight chalk, 1 through 32, what the teams would pick in that spot. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. So we'll jump right into it. Diesel, the number 1 overall pick, the Tennessee Titans. Worst team in the league this past season. You are on the clock. If you were GM, what name are you taking for them to call in Green Bay, Wisconsin in less than 72 hours on the draft stage on Oneida Street?
Well, I don't think I'm going to take all 10 minutes like the Titans will probably do on Thursday. I would take Cam Ward right away. He's not necessarily the number 1 player on the board, but they have absolutely nothing at quarterback. They didn't go sign anybody in free agency. Will Levis is not it. They kind of revamped that offensive line a little bit with a couple signings, and then now they can move J.C. Latham back to right tackle. And I think Cam Ward kind of brings everything. Leadership, success at the collegiate level at all 3 stops that he had. He's kind of one of those guys, too, where I think he plays with a lot of swagger, but he also plays with a big chip on his shoulder, being a very underrated recruit where he had to go to FCS Incarnate World first, and then to Wazoo, and then to Miami where he was a Heisman finalist. But he just can kind of make all the throws, and in this QB class, there really isn't that tier of guys. It's the tier of Cam Ward and then everybody else below him. So I think with the talent that's there, they have to take him and try to build around him.
All right, there you go. Cam Ward off the board at number 1 to the Tennessee Titans. The mayonnaise man, Will Levis, probably going to lose his starting job. So, all right, let's go to number 2. That was me, the Cleveland Browns. Pretty familiar territory. Seems like we see the Browns in the top 5 almost every year, maybe every other year. Pretty interesting. I know they've been linked to some quarterbacks. But I just don't think this isn't rocket science. You take the best player available, you take the unicorn, you take the once in maybe a lifetime dude that can play both sides of the ball. So the second overall pick, I'm taking wide receiver cornerback Travis Hunter from Colorado. I think he truly has all pro potential on both sides of the ball. I think he could step in on both sides of the ball. I love that he wants to do that as well. We will see if that's how it unfolds, if he can kind of keep up with that snap count and really be a starter on both sides. I don't know what he projects better as. I think he's so good on both sides, probably on the defensive side. But like I said, I think this guy could be a contributor, day one starter, be like your rookie of the year type numbers on both sides of the ball, whatever you want to play them. Just go look at his stats. The production was there, 15 touchdowns this last year, 100 receptions, 1,300 yards, 4 picks on the other side. I kind of thought of NCAA college football back in the day. I haven't played any of the new games on the PS5 or whatever, so I'm not familiar with the settings and all the up-to-date, but he's like the road to glory guy that you would just crank up to 99 everything, with just the size, the speed, everything that you want. He's the guy that you create and then just dominate, on whatever level that you play at. So I'm going to take Travis Hunter for the Cleveland Browns for the second overall pick. So, all right, let's go to Mike. The New York Giants, they are on the clock with the third overall pick. Who do you got?
All right. For the Giants at number 3 overall, I took Abdul Carter. I would say between either him or Travis Hunter, they're probably the most talented prospects in this draft. I thought maybe between him and Shador was probably going to be their selection. But I figured since the Giants have signed Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston this offseason, they're probably going to just take that best player available, pass on quarterback in the first round. They do have Kayvon Thibodeau and Brian Burns out at edge already. However, don't forget, Abdul Carter only played truly at the edge position his last year at Penn State. So he definitely has a range of skills, and he can definitely play multiple positions on that defense. For that reason, that's why I took Abdul Carter. I mean, best player available, arguably the top prospect in the draft, depending on who you talk to. I think it's a no-brainer. You have to go to Abdul Carter.
All right, so the top 3 are gone. Maybe not too surprising. I think a lot of mock drafts and a lot of people have those as the top 3, but this is where it could get interesting. So we're going to go to Riley, where things could go a bunch of different ways, but the New England Patriots, they have the 4th overall pick. So Riley, what did you go with if you were the Patriots general manager?
Every Patriots fan, every Patriots personnel in the building are not wanting it to go the way it's going. They want Shador Sanders to go at number 3, but Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter being gone, I've talked about this with you guys. I don't have the balls to do it on here, but everything in my head tells me they should take Gentry or Tyler Warren. They have a running back room, they have a tight end room, but I think not even arguably, I think everybody says those are the 3rd and 4th best prospects in this draft. But Drake May is the future. They do not have a left tackle. They need a left tackle. You got Membu there, athletic freak, but he's played right tackle. So you really want to just plug in a guy at left tackle that's only played right tackle his entire life? Probably not. You kind of got to go with Campbell, the left tackle out of LSU. I know there's a lot of arguments about his arm length and just how good he actually is and how good the offensive line in this draft is. So like I said, it wouldn't surprise me if they went another way. If you don't view him as a top 5 pick, you don't take him. You take best available, and I think the Patriots are one of those buildings where you truly don't know. There's nothing coming out of there. There's no leaks, but safe pick, and kind of what everybody's saying is, Will Campbell, LSU tackle.
All right, let's go back to Diesel. The Jacksonville Jaguars are on the clock for the 5th overall pick. So I'll kick it over to you. Who do you have them selecting?
I think the Jags have a lot of holes to fill in their roster, but I think in this spot they go with Mason Graham, the defensive tackle from Michigan. I think he's kind of almost a safe pick here. It's not necessarily a sexy pick, but he was a 2-time All-American. He was the Rose Bowl defensive MVP a couple years ago. He has 9 sacks in his career at Michigan. He's got a high motor, quick first step, and I think the defensive line, where they have a lot invested in Josh Hines-Allen and Trayvon Walker, obviously was the #1 pick a few years ago. They don't put up the sack numbers that they should, so if you kind of build that interior defensive line with a guy with a high motor, quick first step, you can eat some of those double teams, free up the edges, that, those sack numbers should hopefully go up. It also kind of sucks because, they're playing from behind a lot. So obviously those guys can't just get loose. But I think this is just a good, safe pick with one of the top talented guys in the draft, but it's not necessarily the most sexy pick.
All right, that takes us to the 6th overall pick, the Las Vegas Raiders. And this is where I'm going to get fun. I probably could have gone some different directions. I know they've had a quarterback linked to them. Shedeur Sanders, maybe Jackson Dart. I don't think they like either of those two enough to really, truly trust them to come in and be a starter day one and move the needle in that division. I do think there is some other guys on that second or third tier, like Diesel talked about a little bit, that they could maybe find in the second or third round to come in and compete. And maybe be the future. So I'm going to have a little fun with it. You already have Brock Bowers. You brought in Geno Smith. I'm going to go running back Ashton Genty here from Boise State. There's not really a ton to say about him other than he's a stud, and he had a lot of production in college. You see the player comps with Saquon Barkley, 2,600 yards, 30 total touchdowns this past year, which is ridiculous. Heisman runner-up, Doak Walker Award winner. I think the impressive thing is just like how many people he makes miss. 284 missed tackles forced this past year. That's first all-time in PFF college history, and they track those stats, which is crazy. A 99.9 PFF rushing grade, which is the highest ever recorded. So simply look at the stats in his production. He's a workhorse, 374 carries. I know the shelf life in a running back isn't too long anymore, but I think this is a guy that's going to come in day one, be a very good player in a division that has now a lot of good offensive teams. Obviously the Chiefs, you have Bo Nix with the Broncos, Justin Herbert with the Chargers, so you got to be able to score points. I think you just try to make that a strength, give Geno Smith some help in the running game, free some stuff up for Brock Bowers. So I'm going Ashton Genty from Boise State as the 6th overall pick. All right, let's go to Mike, the 7th overall pick, the New York Jets. Who you got?
All right, so this is another spot that I pondered taking Shedeur Sanders. However, the Jets signed Justin Fields this offseason for 2 years, $30 million, and think Shedeur, wherever he's drafted, he's probably going to be expected to be the day one starter. So I passed on Shedeur again, and instead I went with Armand Membu, tackle from Missouri. The Jets, they lost Morgan Moses at right tackle this offseason, so I think he'd be a good player to kind of pair with Olu Fashanu, their tackle at left tackle that they drafted last year, I believe. Shore up that protection for Justin Fields. I think they're pretty solid all around on the defensive end, so I don't think they're going defense. I think they have some pretty solid weapons. Like I mentioned, they got Fields at quarterback, so I think the line is kind of the place to look here in the first round. So I'm going to go with Armand Membu out of Missouri for that reason.
All right, to the 8th overall pick, the Carolina Panthers. Riley, you are on the clock as the GM. Talk me through your pick.
All right, the Panthers' top 3 needs: defensive tackle. Mason Graham's gone already, so it doesn't really matter. Wide receiver or any weapon. The people are talking about how good these receivers are. Panthers receiver room is not good, but like I said, I don't know how good these receivers are. Tyler Warren, nobody's mentioned him here. Another interesting because he's probably the top available guy. But I think the Panthers would be ecstatic with how this played out. Going edge. Their edge room right now is Jadeveon Clowney, E.J. Wanham, and Pat Jones. Yeah, that's not the best edge room in the NFL. So taking the best edge in the draft, he's still sitting there. So I'm going to go Jalen Walker out of Georgia.
All right, let's go to the 9th overall pick from New Orleans Saints. Diesel, back to you. You are on the clock.
Well, we kind of talked about earlier of how Cam Ward is kind of in a tier by himself when it comes to quarterbacks, but being the most important position in the game, or in all of sports, honestly, teams are going to reach. And I think the Saints kind of make a risky pick here with reaching for Jackson Dart. I think he's a little above Shador in the fact that his arm talent is just a little bit better than Shador's. He gets through his progressions well. He throws a nice deep ball in the intermediate routes. He led the FBS in yards per attempt last year, and I think that would bode nice for the Saints if Derek Carr is healthy enough where Dart could sit behind him, because honestly, I feel like Derek Carr is one of those quarterbacks that likes to push the ball down the field and would probably be a good guy to learn from. And with bringing in Kellen Moore, I feel like when you bring in a new coach, they kind of want to bring their guy in at quarterback to marry them together. And I feel like Jackson Dart just kind of fits that scheme a little better with what Kellen Moore will want to do.
All right, second quarterback off the board, Jackson Dart. Let's go to the 10th overall pick, the Chicago Bears. Hold the booze, please, or you can say I'm really loud, and that's okay. The offseason champs for the, I don't know how many consecutive years since 1985. I had their selection, and this one was interesting because what should the Bears do? Well, they should probably keep adding to their offensive line. Yes, I know they spent a lot of money on their offensive line so far this offseason. But if Caleb Williams is the guy, you probably want to make sure he's protected at all costs since he was the highest sacked quarterback last year. However, I don't think Ryan Poles is calling the shots. I think we've kind of established that. I think Ben Johnson is calling the shots. And with Ben Johnson, I think he's going to add some more tools to his kind of his repertoire, that what he has available for his offense. So I have them taking tight end Tyler Warren from Penn State, especially with Ashton Genty off the board. If Ashton Genty is sitting here, I would not be surprised if the Bears take him. Some of those top tackles are off the board. I think this is best player available, and my goodness, is Tyler Warren just fit what Ben Johnson wants to do? Runs a lot of 12 personnel with those two tight end sets. You could pair him with Cole Kmet, already kind of add to their skill position with, Roma Dunze and DJ Moore. This has the look of a scary offense on paper. Maybe the running back room not as strong, but I think they will probably try to find someone in the mid to late rounds to see if they can come in and be a role player. But Tyler Warren, you can move all around the field. He can really beat you on all different levels. I think Riley talked about him a couple weeks ago on the offensive side. He even does Wildcat. Ben Johnson, probably one of the most creative play callers in the NFL. So it's scary, but I can totally see them doing it. So I am having the Bears taking Tyler Warren, the tight end from Penn State, with the 10th overall pick. Let's go to Mike. The San Francisco 49ers, 11th overall. Talk me through it.
So I had a tough time with this one because in reality, I can absolutely see San Francisco trading down out of 11. I don't think they were as bad as their 6-11 record last year. I think bringing back Robert Saleh is going to be a really good addition for them. He seems to get the most out of his players wherever he goes. Doesn't matter who they have. With them losing 3 players on the defensive line, like I mentioned, I still think whoever they have, he'll get the most out of them. But going through this exercise, looking at the defensive line, I didn't love anyone at that point, at that spot. I didn't love their quarterback room outside of Diamador Lenore. So for that reason, I took Will Johnson, the corner out of Michigan. I know he had a lot of problems with turf toe, I believe, last year. He's kind of banged up all year, and that's kind of, to the draft pundits, I guess, that's kind of hurt his stock according to them. But I think for this exercise, he was kind of the best available at a premium position. And so I took Will Johnson out of Michigan.
All right, we'll go to Riley. The Dallas Cowboys, the 12th overall pick. You were on the clock. Talk me through who you have them drafting at 12.
All right, here it's pretty simple, but it's not at the same time. The Cowboys have to go receiver. Like CeeDee Lamb has absolutely no help. But it's Jerry Jones. I think they are going to go receiver, but who in the hell knows who he thinks the top receiver is? It literally could be any of them. It could be Ibuka. It could be Luther Burden. It could be Matthew Golden. I just kind of selected the one that I think is the best receiver in the draft and the best guy that if you single cover, he'll catch a lot of 50-50 balls. Because you would assume most defenses are probably going to shade towards CeeDee Lamb's side. So to win those one-on-one battles, bigger body, I'm going to go Ted McMillan, the wide receiver out of Arizona.
All right, first wide receiver off the board. Go back to Diesel, the 13th overall pick, the Miami Dolphins. You are on the clock.
Miami's got a couple things to figure out. First of all, with their big stars of Tyreek Hill and Jalen Ramsey, whether they're going to be on the team, off the team, traded, who knows? But their star left tackle, Teron Armstead, just retired, and their offensive line wasn't good at all last year. So I think this pick was a little easy for me that they take Kelvin Banks Jr., the offensive lineman from Texas. He had 42 starts at left tackle. He was a 3-time All-Conference, 1-time All-American, and he won the Outland and Lombardi in 2024. To me, he's like what you call a dancing bear. His feet is what make him. He can mirror the speed rushers. He's probably got to work on his hand placement a little bit. I know some scouts I've read have seen him as guard. Even if Miami decides to play him in the interior line, I think he's a plug and play from day one, and they need probably 4 or 5 starters on that offensive line. So I don't think you could go wrong. Whether you play him at tackle or interior, I think he's the choice for him.
All right, we'll keep it rolling to the 14th overall pick, the Indianapolis Colts. Again, I had some tough time with this one as well, but this is just such a Colts pick. I think they need help in a lot of areas, but I think tight end is like a big need, and I don't think the tight end position is very deep in this draft. I think those top 2 are on their own tier, and there's a big drop-off. Shane Steichen likes his tight ends. You don't know what you got. I know Riley used to be, maybe still is, a big Anthony Richardson fan. Anthony Richardson, you bring in Daniel Jones as well. Those guys have kind of struggled in their career. I think you need kind of that go-to weapon, that safety valve, but a guy that can still beat you at all levels. So I'm going to go tight end Colston Loveland from Michigan. Yes, another Michigan player is drafted. Had some production, 56 catches in 10 games. Watching a lot of the Big Ten, especially this last year, he was like all they had on offense. I feel like when you scouted against Michigan, that was the guy that was at the top of the scouting report on that side of the ball. But every defense knew that, and he was still able to produce and be a weapon all over the field. Short term, middle, I think, the Colts really haven't had a true good tight end since Jack Doyle. I don't know how long that's been. And they've just been traditionally a good like tight end team that typically have, top 5, top 10 tight ends in the league. So I think maybe it's a reach, but again, if it's kind of best player available and what they need, I do think those tight ends are those top 2 are in their own tier. So I got them taking Colston Loveland, the tight end from Michigan. So, all right, let's go to Mike. The Atlanta Falcons, 15th overall, almost to the halfway point. You are on the clock. Talk me through your selection.
All right, so for Atlanta, I took Mike Green, the edge out of Marshall. Atlanta last year had the second fewest sacks as a team, so they need a big upgrade on the edge there. I don't love their edge room, even after they signed Leonard Floyd this offseason. Mike Green, I think he was just the best available player at that position. We've talked about how he's been highly productive last year with 17 sacks. So for me, the pick is Mike Green out of Marshall.
All right. We will go to Riley. The halfway point, the 16th overall pick is the Arizona Cardinals. Who you got them taking?
This was my first really tough one where I just had to rack my brain on what I think they would do. They could go corner. They only have one true, like, legit corner on their team, and you got Jade Barron still sitting there. They could go receiver. Maybe they fell in love with one of these receivers that's left to partner up with Marvin Harrison Jr. And then they do have a glaring hole at right guard. They have nobody. So that is the direction I went, just because Jonathan Gannon has those Eagles coaching staff roots. So it's the best true guard, old school guard in this draft, to plug and play at right guard, a brawler. I'm going to go Tyler Booker, the guard out of Alabama.
All right, that's the halfway point of the first round, 1-32. We'll jump right into the second half. Going back to Diesel, the 17th overall pick, the Cincinnati Bengals. Talk me through who you got the Bengals taking.
Cincinnati spent a gajillion dollars on their receivers this offseason. They have some money invested in their tackles, but they have nothing on that defensive side of the ball outside of Trey Hendrickson. So I was trying to figure out which defensive player to choose, but I think they go defense real early. And I decided on Malachi Starks, the safety out of Georgia. I think he's got a lot of experience, had 42 starts, was a starter as a freshman on that championship team. He's got a good football IQ. He led the team in tackles this past season. He was a two-time All-American. He's just kind of one of those guys that does a lot of things well on the back end of the ball and locates the deep ball, plays with good body control, can cover the tight end or even the slot if need be. And there was a couple different safeties I was looking at, but I think Cincinnati Malachi Starks kind of seems like he can be that commander from the back edge of the field, and I think that's what Cincinnati wants.
All right, let's go to the 18th overall pick, the Seattle Seahawks. Pretty simple. They just spent a lot of money on the one-year wonder Sam Darnold. You got to protect him. So I think you got to shore up that offensive line, which struggled mightily this last year. I know this guy is a big fan of all three of us that we have talked about. I'm going to assume Diesel's probably on the same train, but I'm going to go offensive lineman Gray Zerbel from North Dakota State. He's kind of like duct tape. You can just kind of put him wherever you need him on the offensive line. He can play inside. He can play outside. Is he a guard? Is he a tackle? I think his athleticism is able to let him move around. He's a technician. I think good footwork. I think he can be a top guard, top center, on this roster day one. And I think that they're going to like that versatility and kind of be like a Jordan Morgan kind of thing for the Packers. I think they'll be able to compete at multiple spots and just kind of see where he fits the best. Protect Sam Darnold. You're going to pay him all that money. Make sure the offensive line it improves from last year. So Gray Zerbel is going to be the pick for the Seattle Seahawks at 18. Let's go to 19. Back to Mike. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are on the clock. Talk me through it.
All right. So for Tampa, I went with Donovan Ezeraku, the edge out of Boston College. I thought that cornerback and linebacker can also be in play for them. But I just like the top end of the edge class more than I liked the top end of the cornerback and linebacker class here. Ezeraku is very productive at Boston College. And basically I just thought he was the best player available in our exercise here at a position of need and a premium position. So Donovan Ezeraku out of Boston College.
All right, let's go to pick number 20. I think we might have a few listeners to the Dairyland Drive that are tuning into this one specifically. The Denver Broncos. Riley, you have all the pressure on you as the Denver Broncos GM. You're sitting there at 20. What are you doing out west there?
I'm not going to surprise anybody here. This is kind of what all the experts, every mock draft you look at says. Need help in the running back room. So the pick for me is going to be our Marion Hampton, the running back out of North Carolina. He just does it all. Big body, great vision. turns negative runs into no gain or at least one or two. Another thing I think you could look for, though, if Sean Payton loves one of these receivers, I would say I would think, I don't know, Colin, you would know more Bronco fans than me, obviously. You have to live with one every day. I don't know how happy they are with any of Cortland Sutton's sidekicks, but Matthew Golden sitting there having a burner opposite of the big body Cortland Sutton, me is intriguing, but like I said, safe pick, what everybody's saying, and he is a stud, and they need a running back. Lamar Hampton, running back out of North Carolina.
I think they'd be very happy if they didn't have to trade up to get him if he was there at 20. So, all right, let's go back to Diesel, the 21st overall pick. The Pittsburgh Steelers, you are on the clock.
I get to have all the fun with these picks. So I think Pittsburgh is kind of in that scenario where it's Aaron Rodgers or bust for them to try to make one final run at a Super Bowl. So with that being said, I think they're going to draft Shedeur Sanders, quarterback out of Colorado. Potentially, maybe have to play day one if Aaron Rodgers' scenario doesn't work out. Or he could sit a year and learn behind one of the best. But Shedeur is kind of one of those guys where if he has a clean pocket, he plays with a lot of confidence. He's a Sanders. He's not lacking confidence whatsoever in that aspect. He throws with a lot of anticipation, which some of the quarterbacks in college don't do a lot. But his biggest downfall is he takes a lot of sacks. His offense line wasn't necessarily the best, but he put himself in that situation a lot, holding on the ball too long, extremely long dropbacks, getting in the rushers' lanes to just take a sack. But he can make plays off script. He's always got his eyes downfield, and he sometimes can get into that hero ball. But if he has the time and a clean pocket, he can make just about all the throws.
All right. If you're keeping tally at home, that's the third quarterback that Diesel has taken with his teams. All right, let's go to number 22, the Los Angeles Chargers. This one was painful for me. I'm just purely going off of the connection of Jim Harbaugh being at Michigan. I'm going to go defensive lineman Kenneth Grant, as painful as it is for me right before the Packers pick at 23. I mean, Harbaugh called him a gift from the football gods. He has history picking Wolverines to join his team. But I think there's also a need in the middle of there. Poona Ford left in free agency, so there's a hole in the middle of the defensive line. I think this 330-pound mauler who's just awesome against the run we've talked about. Also his ceiling as a pass rusher. I don't think he's even gotten close to it yet. I think he replaces Ford, but also as an upgrade. So like I said, solely because, well, mainly because of that connection with Harbaugh, but I also think that they have a need at defensive line on the interior there, so I'm going to go Kenneth Grant, defensive tackle from Michigan at 22. All right, now what everyone, or mostly everyone, has been waiting for, the 23rd overall pick. The Green Bay Packers are on the clock. GM Mike Schneider, all the eyes are on you on Oneida Street. It's the year of the draft, all the pressure. Who you picking?
All right. So I really wanted to go wide receiver here, but that's me. And I specifically wanted to go Emeka Egbuka, but that's me. However, I had to look at this through Goody's lenses, right? And trying to step into Goody's shoes is so difficult. I think there's like 3 or 4 different ways he could go in the first round. Ultimately, I ended up going D tackle, Derek Harmon out of Oregon. I also thought corner or offensive lineman could be in play, so perhaps Jade Barron or Josh Simmons. But we have talked ad nauseum on this show about how 3 or 4 of their interior linemen could possibly be gone. There's a strong chance they may not be returning after this season. So I think replenishing that room is going to be a high priority. I think going through this, I think Derek Harmon was the best player available at that spot. So Packer fans, I'm sorry. I wanted to go wide receiver probably just as much as a lot of you, but I think Derek Harmon out of Oregon, and personally, I think that would be a great pick.
You're hired. Packers GM. Sounds just like him. You're in. Go make the pick on Thursday. We'll let you run the name up to the stage. How about that?
Perfect.
All right. Let's keep it rolling. 24. The rivals in the division, the Minnesota Vikings. Riley, you are the GM of that. We'll just keep it nice. Franchise. Who are you picking as the Vikings GM?
A few things. I think this is a prime spot for the Vikings to trade back. They only have 4 picks in this draft, and they have some needs. They need corners. They need a safety. Harrison Smith's not getting any younger. They could probably draft an offensive lineman or two. They picked up some guys in free agency, but they are older. A couple D linemen. But how this has played out, I honestly don't know if they would, because like I said, they need a corner. They lost Cameron Bynum. They lost Stephon Gilmore. They lost Shaq Griffin. And I think the best corner in the draft is still sitting here. So I think they would sit. If this is how it played out, they would take Jahdae Barron, corner out of Texas.
All right, let's go to 25. The Houston Texans. They are on the clock. Back to Diesel. Talk me through your selection with the Texans.
I think the Texans are set up perfectly to just go best player available. And to me, one of my favorite players in the draft. I don't really have an explanation of why. Walter Nolan, defensive tackle from Ole Miss. He's kind of one of those guys that can play up and down the line. I think he had like 6.5 sacks this year at the interior defensive tackle. Probably going to be more of a 3 technique, but he's 6'4", almost 300 pounds. He has good pop. He can defend the run, and I think he's going to take even more pressure off of Will Anderson and Daniil Hunter and free those guys up. And that would just be an absolute insane defensive line down there in Houston. And that would make D'Amico Ryans go crazy having a defense like that. That way the Texans don't have to score a lot of points and they can just win defensively. And I think Walter Nolan, sometimes when you turn on his film, when I was watching some of him, it kind of reminded me of like his ceiling could potentially be Chris Jones-esque, like a little smaller, but you can move him up and down that line, and he can kind of defend the run, rush the passer, do what he wants, and I think the Texans would drool over having him.
All right, we'll keep it rolling. The 26th overall pick, the other Los Angeles teams, the Rams. I think this is also one of those, just how the draft is played out. I think one of the Rams' biggest strengths is the defensive line and just what they've added and some of the young players they have, Jared Verse, Byron Young, Braden Fisk, Kobe Turner. If you have that really good defensive line, let's add a guy behind them and just make a strength even stronger. So I'm going to take Jahad Campbell, the linebacker from Alabama. First team All-SEC this past season, 117 tackles. I think he'd be a great fit in that defense. Rangy, good open field tackler, good blitzer on third down. I think you can utilize him in different parts of what the Rams want to do in that off ball linebacker. So yeah, I think, like I said, I think they have a few needs. But just with how it has played out so far in the first 25 picks, I'm going to take that linebacker and just keep building that front seven on defense and, maybe make it one of the better, run stopping units in the NFL next year. And, a pick that I think could improve them and get them back to the postseason. So Jahad Campbell, linebacker from Alabama. All right, Mike, 27th overall pick. We're going to Baltimore, the Ravens. Talk me through their selection.
All right, so for Baltimore, I went with Michael Williams, the edge out of Georgia. Not a lot of production out of their edge room last year, besides Justin Madubuike, who I believe had like 6.5 sacks last year. Kyle Van Noy's been a really good player for them. really good player overall in the NFL in his time there, but he's 34. He's aging out. So I think they need another player on the edge. So that's why I went with Michael Williams. I did consider going with Eamon Worry, the safety out of South Carolina, to pair up with Kyle Hamilton or maybe Josh Simmons to replace Ronnie Stanley on the offensive line. Ultimately, edge was just too big of a concern to get over. So I went with who I thought was the best available at a premium position, Michael Williams, edge out of Georgia.
All right, another divisional team in the NFC North, the Detroit Lions. They're picking at number 28. Who does Dan Campbell want at 28? And who do you think they will select if you were GM Riley?
I think this one's pretty simple. I think there's two guys they go with how this is played out. I don't know which one they like more. I know which one I like more, so that's the pick I'm going to do. But I think either way, they sprint to front to turn this pick in, and they go defensive end, edge, whatever you want to call him, James Pierce out of Tennessee, who I think is the best pure pass rusher in this draft. Like I said, put him opposite of Hutch. He's probably going to be single blocked. And I think this is a absolute steal for the Lions. I absolutely hate this as a Packers fan.
All right, all of us have one more pick here. The last 4 picks of the first round. We'll go back to Diesel. Number 29, the Washington Commanders. Talk me through their pick.
I think Washington needs some help on the back end, especially in that safety position. So I think they're going to take the absolute specimen of a human being, Nick Emmanuel from South Carolina, 6'3", 220, 4.38, 40. You don't really see that big of safeties much anymore, but if there's one guy that knows how to use that big of a safety, it's Dan Quinn, who was one of the leaders of the Legion of Boom, where he had Cam Chancellor. So I think that and they lost Jeremy Chin, who was another big safety. So I kind of feel like it fits Dan Quinn's style of defense, but he can run, he can tackle, he can cover. He had 2 TUD returns this year. So I think improving that back end of the defense is kind of where Dan Quinn is going to look to improve that defense. So that way Jaden Daniels doesn't have to score 45 points a game.
All right, let's go to the 30th overall pick. My final pick of the first round, the Buffalo Bills. I think it's simple. I think there is some needs. I think offensive line is a need, and I think in the secondary is a need. I do think the offensive line has a little bit more depth. So for cornerback, I'm going to look between 2 guys. There's Trey Amos out of Ole Miss or Maxwell Harrison from Kentucky. I think Trey Amos is the pick here for the Buffalo Bills. A little longer, a little lengthier compared to Harrison. Good in press coverage. I think he's really good in zone cover 2 and cover 3. Yes, they just brought Tre'Davious White back on a 1-year deal. However, you got to think long term. I think you need someone on the opposite side of Christian Benford. I think Trey Amos is got a really high ceiling, and I think he can be a starter day one. I think he's quick-footed. He's pretty physical. We talked about his length. So I think he could be an upgrade in the Buffalo secondary. And again, the Bills seem like they find themselves in the same position every single year, playing the Chiefs at some point in the playoffs, and they can never get a stop on defense. And it's usually in the secondary that they usually collapse in. So I think this is where they add, and I think this is where they look. So Trey Amos, the cornerback from Ole Miss, as the 30th overall pick. All right, we just talked about them. The Chiefs, number 31, the runners-up, the losers is what we call them in this last year in the Super Bowl. Mike, this is your final pick at number 31. Who do you have them taken? Talk me through it.
All right, so I think their top need is pretty obvious. Going back to the Super Bowl, right? We saw how they just got absolutely manhandled by Philadelphia's front 4. Offensive line, they lost Joe Thuney to the Bears this offseason. Priority number 1, protect Patrick Mahomes at all costs, right? So my pick, Josh Simmons, the offensive lineman out of Ohio State. Now, he's coming off a pretty significant knee injury, so he may not be ready like right away at the start of the season. Maybe not even ready to play right away, like that first year. Who knows? But all I know is they need to invest in their offensive line, because Patrick Mahomes. He's the face of the franchise, arguably the face of the league. He needs to be protected. Offensive line, Josh Simmons, no doubter.
All right, that takes us to Riley, the final pick of our mock draft, number 32, the Super Bowl champs, the Philadelphia Eagles. Who do you have them taking out to close out the first round?
All right, to wrap it up, I think there's a few different directions the champs could go. They traded away CJ GJ, so they need a safety. Both safeties, the top safeties, the first round safeties are gone, so cross that off. I think they can go offensive line. They lost Mekhi Becton, so right guard. I think they have somebody in-house they're going to plug in there, but who knows? Also, Lane Johnson, their Hall of Famer right tackle, is not getting any younger, so I think if there's a offensive lineman that they've fallen in love with is there, they take him, but I think all the top linemen are gone. And then defensive end or edge, they lost Sweat. Brandon Graham retired. I think there is we haven't talked very high of him, but there is a physical specimen sitting there that's dropped. Probably the top available player in the board. So I think they would also turn to the front, turn their card in. They would take Shamar Stewart, the edge out of Texas A&M.
All right, there you go. 1 through 32. What we think, or what we would do if we were the GMs of each team. Very fun to go through that and pick 8 picks for each of us. Before we get on to the final drive, I'll open it up for discussion for anyone. When we wrap this up on Saturday, I think, or Sunday morning, I'd have to take a look in our text thread. When you saw the 32 picks all come in, was there anything that surprised you or stood out? Any hot takes or just anything in general of what we think the first round and direction it's going to go? At least if no one makes any trades, of course, that's very, very unlikely to happen. But just from what you saw, anyone?
I was surprised how far Shedeur slid. I think he got to what, 19? I think he was picked.
21.
Okay, 21. Yeah. So even further. Yeah, that kind of surprised me. And then my other draft crush, Emeka Egbuka, not getting selected in the first round, gives me a little bit of hope there in Green Bay.
I'll go off that too. I think we talked a lot about wide receivers and maybe teams going at them. So only one wide receiver picked in the first round, which I think has probably been the team that's been linked to him the most, the Cowboys. So is that a sign of what's to come? I don't know. But it could be interesting if people don't really value or think, they're in that top tier of spending a first round pick of them. What could be there for the Packers at the back of the first end if that's going to change Goody's board? So I thought that was interesting that only one wide receiver got picked in the first round. But
yeah, I had no real surprise takeaways from our mock. I think the most interesting things for me is just like after 2, I think 1, 2 are set. But from 3 on, I don't think anybody has a fucking clue what's going to happen. And this is, Colin knows how much I love the draft. I memorize all the players and all that stuff I have since I was like 10 years old. And this, as long as I can remember, this is the most wide open. Nobody knows what's going to happen from 3 on. My bold prediction, I'll just put it out there, is I only think one quarterback goes in the first round. I don't think any of these quarterbacks are worth a shit. I don't even think Cam Ward's that good. And I think it's going to show. At the same time, there could be 5, though. I could see people panicking and freaking taking Jalen Milroe, who can't even throw a spiral in the first round. So I don't know, but I think anybody has any clue from 3 on. That's what's going to make Thursday so exciting.
Yeah, and I really liked Riley's pick with James Pearson going to Detroit. I think Detroit would absolutely drool over getting him because I feel like going into this past college football season, Pierce was considered arguably the best pass rusher, defensive end in college football, and then to potentially get him at 28 would and pair with Hutch, who you're hoping comes back to be old Aiden Hutchinson, but with as serious of an injury as is he going to lose a step potentially? He's still young. But so it'll be interesting to see what happens because like even though I picked all the quarterbacks, I agree that I don't think they're really worth it, but everybody panics when it comes to the quarterback position and they're going to take them. and they're probably going to hate themselves in a couple of years for doing it.
All right, one last thing, one last question. All of us are Packers fans. What's the percentage? What do we honestly? What are the chances we think the Packers are actually going to trade up since it's in fucking? They can actually make us excited about something.
Less than 5%.
I say trade up, very slim. Trading back, I would not be surprised, depending what their draft board sits. And like I think Riley kind of talked about before, I don't think Goody cares that the draft is in Green Bay. If he gets a good deal and he can add more picks, I would not be shocked that he would trade out of the first round in like early second. Yeah, it's going to piss off a lot of Packer fans in attendance and sitting at home, but I think that's a lot more likely than trading up unless they absolutely love. And I know you sent a text earlier how they don't go off of RAS. They have their own unique athletic score because, Goody is just Goody, but I don't know. I'd be interested to see what his draft board is, but that's what I think they would do.
Yeah, I think if they're going to do anything, they're going to trade down. It gives me a little hope that, they had like a private workout or that private pro day with T-Mac, and if he were to slide to, I don't know, 15, 18 range, maybe give me a 8% hope of them trading up, but they probably got a group of like 7 to 8 guys that they love, and if they're all there at 23, they're going to trade back and just wait to see which one falls to them.
Yeah, I honestly don't think they're going to trade up, but I guess see how it falls. And you see Goody's presser today? This was probably to date the biggest, like, I don't give a fuck, I'm just here, get this over with, press conference he's ever given in his fucking career. It was so funny. He's like, this is stupid. What are we doing right now, guys?
Yeah. Here's my bold take, maybe, that just from how these last 3 weeks have kind of played out, Riley is going to go missing from the podcast for about 3 weeks because the Packers are probably going to take either Mikel Williams or Shamar Stewart at number 23 when there's other guys available that we all would rather have just because they are Goody. They are such Goody guys, especially if he has his own formula of athleticism score. I mean, those are two athletic freaks of potential. Like,
there's so many different tests. There's so many different tests to measure from. I'm sure it's totally different than ours. What is he talking? Shut up, Goody. Just why's he got to do that? That wasn't even the question. Like, they were basically asking him, like, are you gonna like ignore like production like you always fucking do and just go off of RAS? And he's like, well, I actually don't fucking use that. Like, okay, that's not even the question, dude. What are you doing?
All right, let's go to the final drive before Riley blows up the computer screen here. But all right, 1 through 32. Like I said, NFL draft coming this Thursday in Green Bay. Going to be a lot of fun. Going to be crazy. We'll see how it plays out, and then we'll talk about it and recap it all next week. So for the final drive this week, in honor of the NFL draft, and a friend and listener of the show of You're on the Clock, we're going to do a snake draft. And how big of an event the draft is coming to Green Bay. Our topic this week is sports events that you can attend in person. So essentially your bucket list of if you had unlimited money or unlimited, I don't know, time or travel or however you want to phrase it, sporting events that you would like to attend in person. So how it's going to work, we're going to do reverse order of what we just selected. So Riley's going to have the first overall pick. Mike's going to be second. I'm going to be third. Diesel's going to be fourth. But then Diesel's going to have back-to-back picks at 4 and 5 and then bring it back. Only rule I really have is just keep it kind of broad. So talk about the sporting event, and if you want to add, it'd be super cool if these teams were in it, or get in a little more specific, that's completely fine. But let's kind of keep it broad as the sporting events itself, and then you can kind of explain it. So that is it. We're going to do 4 rounds, so 16 total picks. Obviously, you cannot double up. If someone says something insane or crazy, majority can rule and tell them, no, you can't select that. We'll kind of see how it plays out. But we will start with Riley. So you have the first overall pick. Everything is on the table for sporting events that you would want to attend in person, what would be your top one?
Yeah, well, I didn't know how the order was going to go, so this is fucking awesome for me. This is the easiest thing of all time. I'm going to go Stanley Cup Finals game. That's my generic pick. Obviously, if I want to get super specific, I'm going Game 7 in Chicago as a Blackhawks fan. Yeah, that would just the atmosphere of any hockey game, let alone playoff hockey. We've talked about that. It's just not in America. It's number one, the most insane, just the energy level. So, yeah, being at a Stanley Cup game, I think would be just amazing.
Pick number 2 here. I will go with the Masters tournament. I see you laughing there, Colin Riley. I don't know why. Being the big golf fan I am, being at Augusta National was a bucket list item of mine. Just the spectacle of it on TV is just amazing, and I think it would just be an incredible experience to actually be there in person and see it live.
I like it. I'm not surprised. I didn't even put them. I had them on my draft board, but I had it all the way down because I knew you were going to select them. So I didn't even bother.
Oh yeah,
A little surprised with Riley going Stanley Cup. I don't know.
yeah.
I don't know how shocked you guys would be, but that was not on my list at all.
All right, we'll go to me. I did not think this was going to happen, so I have a decision to make. In person, and again, this is like you can get whatever seat you want to. Like this is just you're going to be there in person. You can stand wherever you want. You can get whatever seat you want. So with that being said, my top pick in the first round, number 3, is going to be the Final Four. Just because I would get like courtside seats, I would chalk it up as all 3 games. If Mike is doing all 4 days at the Masters, I'm doing the 2 semifinals and the championship. So the full Final Four experience. I don't really care who would be in it. Yes, of course, it'd be awesome if Illinois was in it. But if I can get courtside seats, money wasn't an issue. It would be such a cool environment just to be there. Yes, it's fun to watch it on TV, but I feel like just the crowds going back and forth for the semis and the championship with the student sections, and usually those are pretty high-level games. So I think the Final Four would be cool as hell. So they're going to be my first-round pick.
My first round pick, honestly, I didn't think it'd quite make it back to me, but I'm going with the Super Bowl. To be honest, obviously the Packers would be like the dream, but I really wouldn't care who's at the Super Bowl. Like this past year, I would have been up crip walking with Serena during halftime, listening to Kendrick throwing down. Like that would have been great. But yeah, Super Bowl, that is number 1 on my bucket list. And then I guess I'll just go right into my next pick of coming back, and I'm taking World Series. Game 7 of the World Series would be ideal. You know, every pitch matters, sitting in the edge of your seat. Maybe one day the Brewers will decide to spend more than the A's, and you know we'll get there. But you know, the World Series coming to Milwaukee, that would be ideal.
Yeah, I think like the full tailgating experience with it too at Milwaukee would be sweet. Just kind of knowing it. I will say regular season baseball and playoff baseball is like night and day different. The waving of the rally towels and just like everyone's on their feet for like every single pitch. It definitely raises. I know Riley absolutely despises baseball for the most part. Maybe not as much as golf and the Masters, but hey, that's probably not on his draft board either. I'd be surprised if it was. No. All right. All right. So I think that's back to me. So my second round pick. All right. So I'm down to 2. And I would not have had this probably a year ago. I think Riley kind of talked me into this. 2 different thoughts. But I'm just going like just the granddaddy of them all. I'm going to go the FIFA World Cup. Specifically the final. I don't care where it's at. I think honestly, like in Europe would be sweet, but like watch a top tier like cup and then just like the atmosphere, it's insane. Like they're shooting freaking fireworks, they're doing chants. Like you're just on the edge of your seat for, you know, all 90 minutes and extra time added. That's probably honestly after getting into Aston Villa and the soccer in the Premier League, I think that's on my bucket list. But I think the FIFA World Cup, with just how big of a world stage it is, I think the atmosphere would just be insane. I think any like big time soccer cup would be up there. But I mean, FIFA World Cup, I think, is kind of the granddaddy of them all. And I know Riley was going to take them in back-to-back picks, so I had to go FIFA World Cup as my second pick.
We going in 2 years or 1 year? It's next summer.
It's next summer, yeah. Yeah, we'll have to see. I know they like did all the host cities, but we'll have to see kind of how it plays out and dates and all that stuff. But I think that'd be cool as hell to go to that. All right, Mike, go ahead.
All right. Yeah, World Cup would definitely be cool. But I do have to point out one thing for you, Colin. You just called it the granddaddy of them all. That is complete blasphemy, and how dare you? I'm going to go with the actual
In
granddaddy.
soccer terminology, yes. Yeah.
I don't care. I don't care. I'm going with the real granddaddy of them all, the Rose Bowl. I have been to the Rose Bowl, and it is an incredible scene. Just in a very unique stadium, very unique setting. Yeah, I would recommend going there for anyone if you love college football. If you want to experience a very unique, beautiful setting, Rose Bowl is so cool.
Okay. Yes, I know that is what that is referred to, but yeah. Yes, go ahead, Riley, before I go off on Mike.
You just ruined my whole freaking list. I'm so oh god. I was hoping that one would just be sitting there for me pretty easy. I'll say the one. So I back-to-back picks. I'll say the one for sure. I'm a big track and field guy, so I'm going to say Olympic, like finals, like the track and field finals, 100, 200, the relays, all that stuff. I just think like the atmosphere, you see that on TV, everybody's holding their breath for that 9.5 to 10 seconds of craziness for the 100 and then all the other events. So just the atmosphere energy in there would be awesome. And then my next one, oh God, this is tough. I'm staying in the soccer world. I just was not mentally prepared to make my decision between these two. I think I'm gonna go UEFA Champions League final, which just means like nobody knows what that means except for me and Colin. Probably that means like all the major divisions of Europe play each other, and then like the two best like actual club teams play each other. I think I would go that over El Clasico, which would be Real Madrid versus Barcelona, which is just a big Spain thing. But yeah, I think I'll go UEFA Champions League final soccer, the two best like actual club teams in the world playing against each other.
All right, that leaves me with my next pick. I'm going to go with the Kentucky Derby. I think being there would be a lot of fun, putting on a nice suit, drinking some mint juleps, watching the horse race. I just think the Kentucky Derby would be a lot of fun. Plus, it's on my birthday weekend, typically, so it'd be a fun birthday weekend.
Okay. All right, so I have basketball. I have soccer, so I want to try to get some versatility on my team. So this is left open still. I'm gonna go specifically the college football national championship game. Again, any seats in the house. Maybe put me up in a private suite or a box or on the 50-yard line, like 30 rows up. Yes, it would be super cool if Brett Bielema, Big Brett, Pumpkin ever gets Illinois there. Won't ever probably happen, but that's a pipe dream. But I think it'd just be cool. A cool atmosphere. More than likely, it's going to be an SEC team or two, so the crowd is going to be insane. And yeah, I think kind of similar to what Mike talked about the Rose Bowl. I think just like probably the whole weekend of it or the few days leading up to it with all the parades and just like everything that goes into it, I think just attending as a fan would be super cool. So I'll do the college football national championship game as my third round pick. And we'll go to Diesel. So Diesel, why don't you talk me through your first two picks? and then close out your roster with 3 and 4, and then just want to recap it after you're done. We'll do that for everyone before you pick your final pick. Talk through the first 3 and then do your final one.
My first 2 were the Super Bowl and World Series. I was happy that the Super Bowl made it to me. I didn't think that, that's my number 1 bucket list item. World Series, every pitch you're on the edge of your seat. My next pick was going to be the Kentucky Derby because I didn't think anybody else would take it. But so thanks, Mike, for giving love to us degenerates out there with Derby weekend. But I'm going to go off script, and this might surprise a lot of people. I'm not a huge wrestling fan, but WrestleMania, I think, would be absolutely absurd to be at. Like this past weekend, it was in Vegas, and I mean, any event in Vegas is going to be top notch. But I think those wrestling fans are just absolutely crazy, and it would be so much fun to be amongst them all, going for the heels, whatnot. WrestleMania, Super Bowl, World Series, my top 3 choices. And then number 4, another probably not really surprising, knowing me. July 4th, Coney Island, the Nathan's hot dog eating competition. Watching Joey Chestnut, the All-American hero, shove those glizzies down his throat and just go to town. That I think would be so much fun to be at. Not in the splash zone. I don't want to be up front for that and having all the water and hot dog bits on top of me. But that I make plans to make sure I'm in my chair watching Joey Chestnut defend the mustard belt every year on July 4th.
Love those. Fantastic back-to-back. I didn't have that one on my list, so either of those. So I love the creativeness, the thinking outside the box. All right, so I had the Final Four was my first pick. I had the FIFA World Cup as my second pick. College Football National Championship as my third pick. So a little bit of basketball, a little bit of soccer, a little bit of football. So I have a couple left on my draft board. Just got to decide what way to go. Gosh, I think I'm down to 2. Okay. Just because I am also a big hockey fan, I think I'm going to go this way. I'm going to do the gold medal match in the Olympics for men's hockey, with the hopes, of course, that's like the pick, gold medal match, men's hockey at the Olympics, with the hope that it's the U.S. versus Canada. Of course, you can't etch that in. Usually, that's typically what it's been. A lot of the times, that's usually one of the big matches. If it was in the United States or if it was in Canada as well, the atmosphere would be insane. But that's high-level hockey with the NHL players back in it, the best in the world. I would hope our boy Bedard is going to be with Team Canada eventually to root against him. But even like watching the what was it called this past year that they did?
Four Nations.
Yeah, the Four Nations was phenomenal. The back and forthness of that entire championship match was really fun. So I think that's going to have a little bit of kind of the storyline going into the next Olympics or whatnot, with the bad taste in the U.S. mouth. So there's just been so many memories in the past. Like I remember in college when TJ Oshie had like 9 shootout goals or something like that. I remember like watching it like on replay at a bar because it was like so early in the morning. All of us joined. Patrick Kane obviously had a lot of fun Olympic moments, so I think that'd be super cool. So that's going to be my final pick, the gold medal match for men's hockey at the Olympics.
All right, so that leaves me and Riley. So my picks so far have been the Masters, the Rose Bowl, and the Kentucky Derby. So good little mix, I think, in there. My final pick, I'm going to go with NBA Finals, being courtside for especially like a closeout game. I'm a big Steph Curry fan, so I've had the privilege of watching him in numerous finals the last decade or so on TV. Man, I think that would be so electric to to see him play in an NBA Finals, just hucking up threes from God knows where and watching him sink them for, 30 feet away or whatever. I think that would be so cool to see that, like, courtside, whatnot. I think that would be electric. So I'm going to go with NBA Finals for my last pick.
All right, and to round it out, so my first pick, I had the Stanley Cup, Game 7 specifically, if I could. I had track and field finals at the Olympics. I had the UEFA's Champions League after Colin stole my World Cup pick. So soccer, people against soccer, if you don't know. And to finish it off, I'm going to go to another different sport. And Diesel, my heart dropped when Diesel said wrestling. I thought he was going to steal mine. I'm going to go with Matt Madness, the college, the real wrestling, WrestleMania and WWE. The real wrestling, Matt Madness, the energy in there is just insane. So yeah, Matt Madness.
And no lie, and Diesel can probably attest to it, covering like sports back in the day. One of my favorite state tournaments to do was always the wrestling state tournament. Like that atmosphere was crazy of individual. I mean, individual is the most fun, but even the team stuff. But that was just a lot of parents screaming and high intensity and stuff. So I can imagine. But all right, I just want to ask this before we wrap it up. Was there any other sporting event on your draft board that you had that didn't get talked about? I had two that I'm going to mention. I mean, obviously the NFL draft was on there, but I didn't have it on my board. If Mike didn't go Masters or someone stole Masters, if I had one more pick, I'd probably go Ryder Cup. I think Ryder Cup would be super freaking fun to go to in the U.S. I think having it like go into one of the U.S. ones and like that's like one of the few golf tournaments that, if it's not live, but one of the few golf tournaments where the atmosphere is just crazy and yelling and drinking beer and all that fun stuff. I think that'd be fun. And here's my sleeper one. Wasn't going to draft it, but had it on the board. If you guys have watched this, the World Championship of Darts. Have you ever flipped on ESPN and see the darts of just pack a full room, a conference room, and that is just like electric for someone throws 3 straight triple 20s. The screaming, the fist pumps. I think like a dude, like, wasn't he just like 18 or 19 years old or something that just won the World Series of Darts? I think that would like low key be a sleeper fun tournament to attend. So anyone else have anything on there that they didn't get to mention that was on your draft board?
I was gonna say like an AFC or NFC championship game, just because like one team obviously has that home crowd, so just the energy of whether you're doing good or bad would be insane. I said El Clasico, so another soccer one. But those are the main two that I had that I didn't take, obviously.
I had 5 still left on my list. I think you picked. One being the NFL draft, which I will be at on Thursday. I think Colin and Diesel, you both will be there as well, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Riley? No?
Oh.
No. Another one that I had, kind of going along the Kentucky Derby theme, was the Preakness.
Oh.
Only because it's
Big old party.
the Kentucky, yes. Kentucky Derby is very classy. Preakness, I believe, down in the infield, they have like the running of the toilets.
Yes.
People run across the top of the porta potties and people like chuck beer and shit at it. So just more like a white trash version of horse racing. Just sounds so fun.
Yeah, I got 2 left that I'm kind of, well, I guess I'm not really surprised nobody picked them, but like the Indy 500 and the Daytona 500. I'm not a car person, but if I were to be at 2 car events, those would probably be the big ones.
Also, too, locally, I guess I even think about this: the Big Ten tourney or Big Ten championship game. I know Indy's always. I've never been there, but I know Mike. I think Mike, you've been to Big Ten championship game in Indy. You said that was an awesome experience, and I'm sure the basketball tournament would be fun too. But all right, well, that is our snake draft. I think Mike will get those posted on the socials, on X, on Facebook. You can vote to see who you think had the best team. Pretty fun. I think it's kind of fun to kind of mix the final drive up, and we've been doing that lately of what like the segment is at the end. Keep everyone on the toes. But Diesel making the debut, the first guest host, did pretty good, did some research, had some fun, hopefully.
Yeah, no, it was a lot of fun. Thanks for having me. It was fun to talk draft, which is, one of the best times of the year, and kind of hearing everybody's takes of what they want to do with their sports world.
All right, before we get out of here, got to go to Mike. I think the suspense has been building. I don't even know if Diesel knows this. Mike dropped a bomb if he's going to release this. He says he had a super hot take on Aaron Rodgers. I got to hear it. I've been waiting to record this episode of what this hot take's going to be. So before we get out of here, Mike, you got to drop that bomb and tell the listeners what they want to hear.
Yeah. So I've kind of come down off this a little bit the last few days. I don't know if I wouldn't call it a hot take or a bold take. I just think it's something that's not implausible or impossible that will happen on Thursday. I think we're going to get some big news on Thursday in regards to one Aaron Rodgers. Probably, if I had to guess, if it happens, it would be sometime like in the afternoon hours leading up to the draft. We haven't heard much from Mr. Aaron Rodgers so far this offseason since the season ended. And lo and behold, right before the draft pops up, here he comes on Pat McAfee's show on Friday, I think it was, spouting off for about 45 minutes, saying a lot of words, but not really saying anything, saying, retirement's still an option. He's met with a couple teams. He talked about how the Steelers, he met them privately for a while. And we've seen the video of him working out with DK Metcalf. We know about his reverence and how much he respects Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh. We know he's kind of been linked to Pittsburgh and the Vikings if he's going to play this year. He talked about how he is a very good friend of Kevin O'Connell, the Vikings coach. They keep in touch during the season. This offseason, the Vikings talked about how I don't think they have actually said the words JJ McCarthy is our starter day one. They said he's good to go to do everything. But I don't think they've actually said we're committed to him. And I think it's kind of been insinuated that the door is still kind of open for Aaron if he is interested. I think it's entirely possible that sometime on Thursday we'll get the news that Aaron's signing with the Vikings. And hear me out, because the draft is in Green Bay. He was taken by surprise with his successor being drafted. We know how kind of icy his relationship has been with Goody. I think it's kind of going to be his way of trying to say F you one more time to Goody, making the day about him, kind of overshadowing everything that's going on in Green Bay. I just think that's something that's entirely possible and would be so Aaron Rodgers.
That's a good take. All right, well, we'll have to see if it comes into fruition, but all right, there we go. The suspense is laid out and over. So Mike's hot take for the week. We'll see if we recap if that does happen next week's episode, along with all the other Packers draft picks. Going to be a lot of fun, going to be crazy. But yeah, make sure to rate us, give us a follow, comment how we're doing on however you listen to your podcast, Spotify, Apple. Mike's get this up on YouTube as well. Follow us on Facebook, formerly Twitter, now known as X, all the socials. But thanks again for Diesel for jumping on as the guest host this week. Had a blast. I'm Colin Selbert. That's Mike Schneider. That's Riley Ashe. Have a good night. We'll see you next week.